going on, guys? Welcome to the first episode of Back in the Dugout show with Jake Aiello. I am your host, Jake Aiello. We are coming to you live from College Park. We had an issue with the camera, so today we are working through them. We are coming to you through the laptop, but we will be back to the wide format that you saw in the preview. I'm really sorry about this. We just couldn't get a camera to work, but we're going to work through it. So, I'm excited for the first show. Hope you guys are. Also going to plug the Instagram at BITD Podcast. Give us a follow. Give us some likes on the recent posts. We'll be posting throughout the week, multiple times a day. And I'm working on getting a TikTok because I put a reel up on Instagram and got a lot of views. So, that format is really working. And I'm excited to bring more short clips to the TikTok community and the Instagram community. Possibly Twitter. So before we get started, guys, I just wanted to say we are one day away from opening day. We had a long off season since the Braves took home the championship. But we're ready. We're back through the off season, through spring training. We got a lot of news for this week, so we're gonna just jump right into it. So we got the announcement of the official rosters. Basically just about people getting pulled up. Top prospects, Bobby Witt Jr., Julio Rodriguez, Spencer Torkelson, the big names. We're going to get to that later in the prospect spotlight. Also, we got Home Run Derby X, which was announced. We got stars from former teams participating in it, like Giovanni Soto, Nick Swisher, and more. I'm excited for this. It reminds me, honestly, of like the Bigs 2, if you ever played that game. I thought that game was insanely fun, and there was a mode where you could go to different cities and, do a home run derby. It was really arcade style, and I think that's kind of what the MLB is going for. Attract more people, attract a bigger audience in Seoul. We got Mexico City, and different places across the globe. So I think it'll be really fun. It's on that reduced field, so it's pretty much like Old Timers Day, as I would, put it. They bring the fences in and whatnot, and they have targets that you have to hit, which is like the Bigs, is kind of reminding me of it. And I just think it's about time for the MLB to really expand, because they get prospects, and they're doing the international draft now. But I think appealing really to those markets. You gotta have events, you gotta travel, and I just think it's a really good idea. Being a young MLB fan, the league is honestly traditional. It's a very traditional league, but we are seeing them, trying to branch out, trying to do things like the NBA, reaching a larger market, and I really appreciate that because I think the NBA does a great job at reaching different markets, and I think the MLB, is going that way, so I'm excited to see how this event pans out. Also, I don't know if I said this before, but I love Nick Swisher. Nick Swisher is great, retired fairly young, so he still has a lot of pop, and he's also just a hilarious personality, so I'm really excited to see him participate because I know he probably has fans all around the world, and I'm sure a lot of people will be rooting for him, as myself. So next we got umpires using their mics to announce review and replay review changes and announcements, similar to the NBA once again. MLB is probably learning a few things from NBA in its recent growth. And it was actually used in a spring training game, so we did get to see it used. And it's it's supposed to help fans understand why they make the calls, why they make change of the calls, why they confirm the calls. Just one thing, these replay in every league, especially the NBA. I talk about the NBA a lot, but these replay reviews really slow down the game. Sometimes they'll be, looking at the camera or looking at the replay with the headphones on for 5-10 minutes. Really can slow down the game. MLB games are already 2.5, 3 hours. 2.5 if you're lucky. So that's the one thing that I don't like about it. Now they got to take time to, put their microphone on, explain it to the crowd. So it could slow the game down more, but I like the clarity for fans. But I do think it'll give fans a chance to lash out at the umpire while he's announcing, because usually it's just quiet exchange of safe or out signal, but now they will be announcing if they are safe or out with the microphone. So, there could be a lot more boos. Hear the boos on the microphone, fans can get more involved. So I do like it for that reason. Also, we have MLB Top 100, which I covered on Instagram. I did a post 100 to 1 through by 10s. You should go check it out. Like I said, BITD podcast. Just one thing that I wanted to point out was the list is topped by Mike Trout at 2, who was knocked off his number 1 throne by his teammate at 1, Shohei Ohtani. And I just thought it was interesting that they have the Angels have the top 2 guys. And they have Rendon, and they are not doing anything like that is notable. They have the former MVP. They have 2 former MVPs. And they're not. I don't think they're projected to make the playoffs. I just think it's sad what they're kind of doing with Mike Trout and Ohtani. Not Ohtani as much because he's much younger, but Mike Trout kind of wasting away in Los Angeles or in Anaheim. But I think that, maybe they'll go somewhere this year. Maybe they'll go somewhere with Ohtani getting better and better. But I do feel bad for Mike Trout and that team sort of wasting his potential and his greatness and his legacy. So next we have Mets-Padres trade that fell through. We posted a lot of trades on our Instagram, but this one we did not get to post because it did not go through. And it would have sent Eric Hosmer, Chris Paddock, and Emilio Pagan to the Mets for Dom Smith. I'm pretty sure the Mets did not pull the trigger on this one because I know Dom Smith wanted to get traded, and the Mets might have balked on the situation. But Chris Paddock, he's a young player. He has a lot of potential. Might not be performing to his top level right now, but he does have, he'll add that cushion to their rotation with DeGrom out for the foreseeable future, and Scherzer, getting hung up on injuries in spring training. I said he's 25. He's got a lot of potential. And Hosmer's got that huge contract, and they would have been able to unload that contract. And we know he produced a lot better with the Royals and their championship team. He's been doing all right with that star-studded team. They probably expected more, but he has declined since joining San Diego. So, it would have been a fresh start for him in New York. And Dom Smith is a great hitter, decent outfielder, and, they could have used that bat in San Diego, especially with the DH now. But, that fell through ultimately, so we did not get another blockbuster trade. And this year's been pretty insane with signings and trades. As we'll get to later, Austin Meadows. Shout out. Then we got Carlos Beltran, who opened up about the scandal in Houston. So now he's working as the New York Yankee announcer. And these are his words. He said, Astros crossed the line about sign stealing. There's a stain on the title that they've all shown remorse at some point. I don't think Jose Altuve has really shown remorse. He wished the organization told him to stop. Said some days the system worked, some days it didn't, but their team was very good, so it didn't matter. And we all know he got fired by the Mets after becoming their manager for a couple months. I don't even think the season didn't even start by the time he was fired. Now he's working under the Yankees, which I thought was interesting because the Yankees are kind of under fire for the Apple Watch cheating scandal. In the same year, in 2017, I think the Red Sox as well were part of one of those scandals. Just my reaction was, I don't agree when he's like, the organization should have told us to stop. I think, as an adult, you kind of understand what you're doing. They know the technological rules against not using sign stealing, and I think they don't need I don't think grown men need another group of grown men telling them, and grown women telling them that they need to stop cheating. I think you kind of understand what you're doing. He was saying they didn't know that it was bad, or they were towing the line, or they didn't think they went over the line. I think you knew you went over the line. I don't know. You installed a camera. There's also the video of Jose Altuve saying, "Don't open my shirt because I got the thing." What you're doing is wrong. There's proof, and you see it. You understand you're doing something sketchy. So, I thought he came out now, just because he's going to be in New York, and he's probably going to get bombarded with questions about it because the New York media is gonna get at him. New York's probably one of the biggest teams that's kind of upset with what happened. in light of their cheating scandal. But they were going to get to him. I think he kind of just saved face before they could basically destroy him with, accusations and whatnot. And like they all basically got off scot-free. They have the championship title. They didn't get it revoked. And like he's apologizing years later. I don't understand. Like I said, I think he's just saving face. And as I said, like they should understand what they're doing. They don't need to be told to stop. So he should have done something earlier, except for years later when he's retired, kind of just saying it out of nowhere. I think they all should have. Now Correa's out. He's out of Houston. So, I guess he's fine, but I think they don't really talk about it. I think they're kind of just trying to move past it, but I don't think it's a good look for any of them, especially Beltran. Next we got Lance Lynn's injury. He left the spring training game last Saturday with knee discomfort. He's likely to get surgery on his torn meniscus, and he'll be out 4 to 6 weeks, and maybe longer, because, he's an older gentleman, so at that age, I don't know. Coming back from injury is pretty difficult, especially as a pitcher if you got something in your knee, because your legs are like basically all your momentum, all your mechanics. He's coming off probably one of his best years, probably the best year. He was an all-star, his first all-star game since 2012. And there are other pitchers, Vince Velasquez and Reynaldo Lopez, they're going to have to pick up the slack. Slack. They still also have former all-star Lucas Giolito, promising Dylan Cease, and Gold Glover on the mound, Dallas Keuchel, who is getting on the older side, but he can still produce. Not the AC once was, but they do have good depth in the rotation. I think they can manage. I think their offense can manage. Maybe hold up that pitching rotation, that depleted pitcher rotation, without Lance Lynn, and they just got AJ Pollock, one of the best outfield bats in the league. And Josh Harrison, might not be as impactful as AJ Pollock, but still another bat. And just on top of that, a top 5 offense. So we wish Lance Lynn a speedy recovery, but I think his team can manage. And we want to see him back because he's looking the best he's ever had in his career in Chicago. Next, we got Austin Meadows going to the Detroit Tigers. It seems like the Detroit Tigers are an upcoming team, spending a lot of money. Javi Baez. They're probably going to have to pay Austin Meadows at some point. But, he makes up for that spot once Riley Green went down with an injury in spring training. I'm pretty sure a foot injury that they're not going to be able to use him. The Rays chose to save money. I don't really understand why. They are, like the AL East is stacked. They're all pretty much on the same level. They all have a chance to make the playoffs, win the division, wild card spot. So, everyone I saw on Instagram, the Rays are like giving up a power bat, and they're still going to make the playoffs. I think their front office, I guess, knows what they're doing. Austin Meadows, hit a down year, but he still brings great power. So, I guess maybe Tampa saw some value in him before. He might have another down year. So they shipped him out to Detroit, and he is actually reunited with his brother Parker in Detroit. Sort of a Giannis Thanasis Antetokounmpo situation, back to the NBA, as I said. So we're excited to see Austin Meadows bring power to Detroit, along with Javi Baez, as I said, and Spencer Torkelson coming up at the first base position. And last in the news, we got Todd Frazier retired. Absolute New Jersey legend, Little League World Series world champion, 1998, home run derby champion. He had a long, successful career, especially with the Reds. Spent some time with the Yankees, as every MLB player does towards their older age. Pirates, Mets, White Sox. And we're just happy for him. New Jersey legend, as I said, had a great career. Long career, decades-long career. We're excited for Mr. Todd Frazier and his retirement, and to see what he does next. If he stays in baseball as a coach, awesome. Hitting coach, he had great power. If he doesn't, we wish him good luck on whatever his future endeavors are. So that is it for In the News. So for the next segment, we are going to jump to veteran/old head of the week. We don't mean old head Offensively, we mean old head as an endearing term. For an older MLB player, that's just getting it done. We really appreciate these players, especially being a 21-year-old MLB fan. I've been around the MLB for a bit, so those 2000 sluggers, those 2000 pitchers, we have some respect for them in their later years. Although we'll say later years, but they still find great success, or else they would not be on this list. So we are going to start off with Mr. Paul Goldschmidt of the St. Louis Cardinals. He was doing his job in spring training. As an older gentleman, you might not really need to be involved in spring training. With this offseason, it might be different with the lockout and, getting loose. But he did his job, did more than his job probably. This week, he went 5 for 7 with an OPS over 2 and 2 home runs. And he finished spring training with a .500 batting average and 4 home runs. So we're really excited for this power bat. I'm sure the Cardinals are excited with Nolan Arenado, Tyler O'Neill. I'm sure getting this production. I mean, he's been one of the best contact hitters this decade, with 2000s and 2010s. But I'm sure they are excited from what they saw last year to what they're seeing now, that they're getting great value out of him, especially in his later years. He's often overshadowed by Nolan Arenado, and for good reason. Platinum Glove winner, tremendous hitter. But as I said, Paul Goldschmidt's a great contact hitter, career .300 hitter, and he had his best slugging percentage with the Cardinals last year since joining them. So I think they're excited, as I said, from what they saw last year and this year. He had 31 home runs last year, and he was 6th in MVP voting at 33 in a Gold Glove. So they got 2 Gold Glove, 1 Platinum Glove, 2 Gold Glove cornermen, and a guy who's getting 6th place in MVP votes at 33. I think they're in a good spot. I think he arguably had a as good or better 2021 than Nolan Arenado. If you look at OPS plus and nearly every hitting stat. I know Nolan Arenado is a different type of hitter, but I think factoring age and just, who he was and what they got out of him last year, I think he had arguably as good or better, as I said, hitting season than Nolan Arenado. I don't know about fielding, but, he got a Gold Glove. So it's still tremendous what we're seeing out of him. And in 2022, Baseball Reference has him projected at a .271 batting average, 24 home runs. It's a dip from his usual batting average, sits around 300, as I said, or high 280s. But, 271 is still a tremendous batting average. I think for sure Hall of Famer. 24 home runs at 34, I'll take it. I'm sure they'll take it. As I said, they got power bats, Nolan Arenado and Tyler O'Neill and Tommy Edman as well. So I think they're very pleased with what they're getting. Next, we are going to go with Justin Verlander of the Houston Astros. So as you know, Justin Verlander, 2-time Cy Young winner, but he did miss the entire 2021 MLB season after the shortened 2020 season after getting Tommy John surgery. He made only 1 start in the shortened 2020 season. He pitched 6 innings and let up 2 home runs on opening day. So not the start you're looking for out of your ace. But, there probably was something wrong with his elbow because he did elect to get Tommy John surgery. So it explains why he was not in that form. This past week he was dealing in spring training. He started 2 games, allowing 2 runs in 9 combined innings. He struck out 11 batters in those 9 innings with a 1.11 whip. 1.3 is what you're looking for. 1.3 or lower. So, he exemplified a successful spring training after a tough surgery at that age, as I said. But, he's all about spin rate. He's not about throwing hard. But still, coming back from that surgery is not easy for everyone to do. So he finished spring training with 4 starts and a record of 2-0. In 13 and 2/3 innings, he struck out 15 batters and finished with a 1.32 ERA. Those are insane numbers for any pitcher. I know it's spring training, but as I said, he's coming off injury. So it looks like he'll be able to get back to a decent form. Obviously not his best form, but he could be a very valuable arm in the rotation. And he will not start opening day as he eases back into the long MLB season, as the Astros announced. So we will need Framber Valdez, Luis Garcia, Jose Urquidy, and Jake Odorizzi to pick up the slack as Lance McCullers Jr., who had a standout year, is out, and Greinke is in Kansas City. So, these young arms they do have a lot of potential. They had an extremely successful season last year, and they all had ERAs under 4.22 with at least 6 wins. And all of them, Odorizzi I think is 31, but the rest of them, Valdez, Garcia, Urquidy, they're all young. They're all very, they have room to grow. They have very large potential. And they're only getting better. I think they had promising seasons last year, as I said. And a leader like Verlander, I'm sure he's been around there. He's been around the clubhouse, obviously, but maybe he can return to an all-star form in his limited role, and he can, be somewhat of a mentor for these guys to really, see what greatness is, see what long-lasting greatness is. And I just hope he can, do for that Houston team what he has done in the past. Maybe not as much in performance, but, as I said, that role model aspect and just being there for his teammates. So, shout out to Justin Verlander for a great spring training. So for the next segment, we got Surprise of the Week, which we are giving to 2 players this week. One for the positive contribution that we might not have, seen coming, and one negative that really struggled this spring training, who we thought maybe was going to have a better spring training. So first, we got our good surprise, which was Marwin Gonzalez for the New York Yankees. The Yankees signed him to a minor league deal in March for up to $1.15 million. I was going to highlight Kyle Higashioka for the Yankees. Pretty sure led the league in RBIs and home runs this spring training. But Higashioka was on the roster last year. He's a solid platoon guy, solid catcher for the Yankees. And Marwin Gonzalez wasn't, on a team. So I thought, he's a bit of a bigger surprise, getting the opportunity that he has this year. He's not played this as much this past week in spring training, but last week and throughout spring training, he hit .365 with 3 home runs, which was second on the Yankees behind Higashioka, and 9 RBIs, which is also second on the team behind Higashioka. And Gonzalez, he can find a spot in that opening day roster, as he did. I'll get to that later. He's depth in the infield. He can play pretty much every position. So him and Gleyber Torres. Gleyber's going to start at second, but he'll be that infield utility guy that they need if they do need him at any point, similar to Steven Drury when he was on the team. And before his recent success, he split 2021 between the Astros and the Red Sox. Astros first, and then the Red Sox. And then, he saw one of his worst years at the plate. Never been a real average hitter. But in Boston, he hit .202 and 176 in Houston. So really career low numbers. Might have looked like it might have been it for him. But his versatility in the field kept interest in him high. As I said, everyone's looking for utility guys, especially with a proven track record. And also just a veteran presence on that Yankee team. And as I said, he got that opening day roster spot as the Yankees announced. So praise be to Marwin Gonzalez for putting together a really successful spring training when some people didn't think he was going to make the roster. So just wanted to shout him out and looking forward to see him in the Bronx and maybe catch a couple games with him playing. Also might get some time DH and, pinch hitting. So we want to go next to the, maybe a negative surprise. Not saying there's anything wrong with this player. They have time to pick it up. But we're going to go to Kyle Hendricks. He really struggled through his 4 starts in spring training. Through 11 innings, he allowed 17 hits. Coming out with an ERA just south of a 10. And he allowed a team high of 6 home runs in those innings. As the team's number 1 starter, as their ace, it's quite concerning to see him struggle in spring training. You expect more out of this guy. He's 31, possibly entering his prime as a pitcher. He spent his entire career with the Cubs, achieved success with an ERA of .336 across his 8 years there. He even led the league in ERA and ERA plus in 2016, a year when he won 16 games. So he's looking a bit far from that point 6 years later. And also, he's been slightly declining. His ERA took a hit. And it was 4.77, but he still managed to win 14 games last year, even with the Cubs, kind of trading away their entire team, and signaling sort of a rebuild over there. And they did get Marcus Stroman, but they want to improve. He'll want to improve if they want to be the 1-2 punch, an effective 1-2 punch for the Cubs next year, regardless of where they see themselves going. And there are also rumors of Marcus Stroman already looking for different teams and seeing interest in the San Francisco Giants. So, that rumor, along with, a lackluster spring training from their number one, is not something you really want to see. You don't really want to derail the pitching staff before the season even starts. We're just looking forward to projections. Hendricks is still projected to get 12 wins with a sub 4.5 ERA. So, arguably equal to better season in terms of ERA than last year. But where it's looking like now, he's going to need some real improvement, get out of his head possibly, and get on the mound and just be the pitcher that he knows he can be for the Cubs. As I said, regardless of what they're doing, he needs to just be consistent and just have faith in himself. So we will see if this rotation is going to rebound from what's been happening, from the bad performance or the poor performance and the rumors. But they're all established MLB veterans. I think they can get the job done. And we want to see Kyle Hendricks succeed, of course. So that is it for our surprises of the week. So this next segment we are going to go to is the Young Gun of the Week. Basically, this is a young guy, maybe not a prospect. This spring training, it's kind of blurred with getting called up to the opening day roster, but otherwise, a young guy who's really performed well, similar to Veteran of the Week, but the opposite end of the spectrum. So we're going to go with Edward Olivares this week for our first one. 26 years old, he hit .429 this week with 2 doubles, and he was one of the hottest hitters the entire spring training, with a batting average of .500, with 10 RBIs and 3 home runs, and an OPS just south of 1.5. He's crushing alongside stud Bobby Witt Jr. on the Royals. And these two guys are a good sign for the Royals' future, which, their team has really gone downhill from that World Series title, as I mentioned, with Eric Hosmer in 2015. And he's yet to appear in over 40 games this season. He's, as I said, making a case for opening day roster spot, which I'm pretty sure he secured. And, he can play all outfield spots, which really adds value to him, similar to Marwin Gonzalez, but Olivares being way younger at 26. And he's shown improvement since his time with the Padres when he came over to the Royals last season. And I just think he could be a real key reserve outfielder, even if he's not an everyday starter, still being on the roster, still being available, and, just learning and becoming better. And, if you're not using him, send him down, get him some key at-bats, really build his confidence. But I do think he will bring value as a young and talented upcoming outfielder for the Kansas City Royals. So next we got Matt Brash. He made 1 start this week, 4 innings, allowing just 2 hits and 1 run. His entire spring training, he pitched just over 9 innings with a sub-1 ERA. And something we really want to highlight here is 12 strikeouts in 9 innings. He did make the opening day roster. He was announced as the 5th starter in the rotation at just the age of 23. 2021, he spent between high A and double A with a 2.31 ERA over 19 games. And back to the strikeout numbers, he struck out 142 in 92 innings, which is a 13 K per 9. And his real highlight, as I said, is his strikeout numbers. Being a young guy, put a lot of strain on that arm, but it is incredible to see someone with that strikeout numbers, and he will learn from the newly acquired Cy Young winner Robbie Ray, who is the career leader all time, I'm pretty sure, in strikeouts per 9 innings. So they're basically similar pitchers. One is a Cy Young, established ace of the team. One is up and coming, just 23, as I said. And at that 5 spot in the rotation, it's not a lot of pressure on you. Obviously, there's a lot more pressure on Robbie Ray coming in with the Cy Young, so you can kind of afford to fail maybe a little bit, not have a great year, but just show promise and just show, that strikeout ability, that strikeout power that you've shown in the past. And that's what they're looking for. And I think he can really, provide in his first year. I think maybe get down in strikeouts as you're, going up leagues. But, just at that 5 spot, as I said, to just, bring some value and show some life, show some encouragement, and just show a good baseline for what you're providing for the team going forward. So for our next segment, we have Prospect Spotlight, Prospect of the Week. This one's going to be fairly long since we have a lot of prospects that made the opening day roster. But we're going to jump right into it. We got Julio Rodriguez, Mariners top prospect, number 3 MLB prospect. He hit .571, 3 RBIs on 2 doubles and 2 home runs this past week, with an OPS over 1.75. He spent last year between high A and double A, and he never played in triple A. He's making the jump straight to the MLB. 2021, in high A and double A, he hit .347 with an OPS over 1,000. With 47 RBIs and 21 stolen bases. So good power, good hitting, good contact, good speed, a well-rounded baseball player. And Rodriguez, George Kelenic in a very young and talented outfield unit for a borderline playoff team, especially with the addition of Suarez and Winker. They've got real promise, real power, good hitting team. And I think they could make a wild card this year. So we're excited to see Julio Rodriguez, got that call up. And we're excited to see what their young team can do this year. Next we got Bobby Witt Jr., top MLB prospect, jumped over Adley Rutschman this year in terms of MLB pipeline ratings. This week he batted .273 with 2 RBIs and 11 at bats. And throughout spring training he hit .406 with 3 home runs and an OPS of 1.222. He hit 33 home runs and stole 29 bases in 2021 between AA and AAA. And he's been compared to Mike Trout and Chipper Jones. So with those comparisons, you'd like to see a perennial all-star ride out their long career with this singular team. In Bobby Witt Jr.'s experience, it will be the Royals we will hope to see. And the team has little playoff hopes. They've really been rebuilding or on the down since the World Series championship. So they're really just looking to develop Bobby Witt Jr., Alberto Mondesi, and see some growth from their young starting rotation behind Zach Greinke, who returned to the Royals this year. So as I said, we're just trying to see some growth, trying to see some real promise from all these young players, especially Bobby Witt Jr. But he will have a decent amount of pressure. Next, we got Spencer Torkelson of the Tigers. Got called up, another top prospect at number 4, Tigers top prospect. In 5 games this week, he hit a home run with an OPS over 980. Entire spring training, he hit .267 with 4 RBIs. But in 2021, he traveled all the way from high A to triple A, so we see fast exponential growth in Spencer Torkelson last year. And then in the Arizona Fall League, he hit .450 through 7 games. So we see this, as I said, this growth, this tremendous growth in such a small time period. His teammate and number 5 prospect, Riley Green, is out with a foot injury. So a lot of the pressure is now on him, with him being on the opening day roster and not Riley Green out for a bit. He will take over at first for Jonathan Scope, as Scope moves back to second, as he was playing first base out of necessity last year. And while the Tigers are still projected to miss the playoffs, they can only get more dangerous in upcoming years with Riley Green coming back, Spencer Torkelson, Jonathan Scope, and Javi Baez signed to a 6-year deal. So they're playing the waiting game, the long game. If 6 years is what you would deem long. So just once again, not a great team waiting for the young stars to develop. We go to Hunter Green next. 22nd overall prospect. He's pitched 6 innings this week, and he's kind of struggled with an ERA over 10. He's allowed 13 hits in 9 innings. Has not had a stellar spring training, as I said, but he did make the opening day roster. Pretty sure he was the earliest or one of the earliest announcements to make the roster. His first start will be on April 10th as the number 4 starter in the rotation. But he did have 139 strikeouts in 106 innings in 2021, where he pitched with an ERA of 3.3. As I said, number 4 starter and number 5 starter that was announced is actually next on our list. And both of these people, Nick Lodelo is the next person we are going to get to. Both of these pitchers are joining, a very young rotation, along with Tyler Mahle, Vladimir Gutierrez, and River San Martin. So they're expecting a lot out of their young prospects. And so, as I said, we have Nick Lodelo coming in next, number 42 prospect, another Reds pitcher, fills in that number 5 spot, as I said. Throughout spring training, he pitched 11 innings with an ERA of 2.38 and struck out 12. He pitched 50 innings in 2021 between Double and AAA with 78 strikeouts and an ERA of 2.31. As I mentioned, he fills out this young rotation with the Reds, and they have an incredible amount of potential being so young. And finally, I would just like to shout out Diego Castillo for making the Pirates opening day roster after raking in spring training. So, next up, we have a social media moment. So basically, this will be a meme, funny video, heartwarming video, something that might not, it might make the news, but it's really a different type of story. Sometimes it's a human interest story, funny story, as I said, something to really, get the other side of baseball that you might not see on highlight tapes and whatnot. So we have another prospect who made this week's social media moment. It's 24-year-old pitcher Ethan Roberts. Pitched 5 innings with 7 strikeouts. And the video basically is the moment that manager David Ross told him that he made the starting roster. And basically, it's just a very heartfelt and emotional moment. He sits back, he's amazed, he's crying, he's really just doesn't even know what happened, basically. He embraces David Ross, he embraces other coaches and other players. And he's just crying, and it's realizing a dream, as a baseball player. He's probably been playing baseball for he's 24, probably 18 years or something. It's his whole life. And I just thought it was so pure, so childlike, honestly. And it's just it's every MLB player. I mean, every baseball player's dream, every athlete's dream is, to make it to the big leagues, make it to your respective league. So I just thought that was important to highlight. And so, we're proud for Ethan Roberts, and I'm glad, it was an intimate moment between him and his coaches, but I'm glad that the camera, got to capture that moment, and now we can have that moment forever, on tape and in memory. So I really thought that was a great moment to share as social media moment of the week. So next we got historical player, or obscure historical player. So for this segment, we're basically going to highlight a player throughout history. As I said in the preview, history you might not know, player your parents might not know, your grandparents, they probably would have forgotten them. When you hear the name, you might be like, oh my God, I remember that guy. So, we're just sharing some history and some knowledge with you guys. This week's player is probably more your parents' or grandparents' time. But we have Dean Chance, who is a 2-time All-Star and 1-time Cy Young winner, and opponent of Mickey Mantle. So we'll get to that in a second. He debuted at age 20 out of Northwestern High School in Ohio, and then went on to play 11 seasons between the Angels, when they were the California Angels, the Minnesota Twins, the New York Mets, Cleveland Indians, and Detroit Tigers. He won the Cy Young in 1964 with the Angels, and at the time was the youngest Cy Young winner ever. Well, that was a long time ago, so I'm not sure if that still stands. He won a league-high 20 games with an insane ERA of 1.65. The league was different, obviously, back then, but still, youngest to ever win Cy Young, and he won 20 games, given they got more starts, and also a 1.65 ERA. He also pitched 15 complete games, which is obviously as I said, unheard of in this MLB. It's very different with the pitch limitations and saving people's arms for the playoffs. Similar to the NBA, I just keep going back to the NBA. You're limiting your guys for the playoffs and more important games. And just for comparison, Adam Wainwright, Zach Wheeler, and German Marquez led the league in complete games last year with a staggering 3. So he pitched 12 more complete games than the league leaders. Chance also pitched the same amount of complete games as Max Scherzer had wins last year. And we all know Max Scherzer is one of the best pitchers in the MLB history. And Scherzer had 15 wins. And he was 5th in the league. So this guy, just complete games, would be 5th in the league with wins. Chance also put together 11 shutouts. And again, this is unheard of into NBA today. I keep saying the NBA so much. This is unheard of in the MLB today. Because last year, there was a 4-way tie for the most shutouts at 2. So 9 more shutouts in 1 year than the league leaders. He had one more All-Star year in his first year with the Twins in 1967, where he pitched a no-hitter against Rod Carew and the Cleveland Indians at the time, Cleveland Guardians now today, where he walked 5, but did strike out 8, and did pitch that no-hitter. He was well known for his unorthodox delivery and wild pitching, similar, I would say, to Randy Johnson. He would do this sort of wind-up where he would, take the ball, wind up, and just, like a kid, just not face home plate and kind of just wheel it at the catcher. He would face the complete opposite direction, and he was feared by most. And as I said, he was a contemporary of Mickey Mantle, and the great Mickey Mantle was quoted as saying, and I quote, "Every time I see his name on the lineup card, I feel like throwing up." Like, that's just insane. Coming from one of the best baseball players, one of the best Yankees, best hitters of all time, he feels like throwing up. He's kind of nervous when he sees him. I just thought that was incredible. And then sportscaster Phil Pepe was also quoted as saying, and I quote, "It's Chance," as in Dean Chance, "not CBS who owns the New York Yankees, lock, stock, and barrel." So just seeing how dominant he was, like the fear he put in sportscasters and players, especially Mickey Mantle, I just found that, kind of awesome, because I didn't even know who Dean Chance was. But I'm sure a lot of parents and grandparents will probably know who he is. So he dominated Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris and their Yankee team in 1964, where he allowed just 14 hits and 1 run over 50 innings against the Yankees. He threw 5 complete games and 4 shutouts against them that year, and he finished his career with 128 wins and an ERA of 2.92. So shout out Dean Chance. I don't think he's here with us today, but we remember you, and we remember your dominance over one of the best baseball players ever in Mickey Mantle, as well as, Roger Maris and those great Yankee teams. So to finish up the show, we are going to go with today in MLB history. And April 6th, it's pretty busy on history, pretty important. So we will go to 1972, where it was the first games canceled due to an MLB strike. The strike was announced on April Fool's Day, but it's not a joke. As most of us know, it's very serious. Baseball fans everywhere do not appreciate the strikes and the lockouts. The strike would go on to cancel 86 games that season, and the players voted unanimously to strike, which obviously shows they found some huge problem with the ownership and the league. Since then, there have been 8 lockouts, strikes, and most recent one being this season, 2021 is when it started, as I'm sure, because everyone remembers it basically was up until a week or 2 ago and really rushed spring training. Then we will go to 1977 when the Seattle Mariners made their franchise debut against the Angels. The Mariners were an expansion team along with the Blue Jays, who played their game on a different day, which is why they are not also on this list. The Mariners got shut out 7-0, which is not a good start, but they finished with a 64-98 record, which is not a great finish. But, they're getting better. They're getting better this year for sure. They had a great year last year. Their leading hitter was Leroy Stanton, who finished with a .275 average and 27 home runs and an OPS plus of 130. So a great season in their first year from Leroy Stanton. Thank you for carrying your weight at the dish. And, their pitching's a bit different. Their winningest pitcher was Glenn Abbott, who had 12 wins with 13 losses and an ERA of 4.45 with an ERA plus under 100, so pretty below average, sub 500, kind of high ERA, but, in their first year, they still got 12 wins. So we are really grateful Glenn Abbott led that team in the bullpen in the rotation that year. And now we move to 1982, which was the largest crowd ever assembled to see a baseball game, which was in Minnesota. 52,279 fans showed up for the first game at Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome in Minnesota. That is an insane amount of people. I don't even know. Baseball stadiums probably hold that much. Maybe a little less, but I don't think they're selling out 52,000. That's like a small NFL stadium. I know MetLife is like 80,000, and I don't think MetLife sells out right now. So it's probably like a football game. And Minnesota ultimately lost to the Mariners, which we mentioned before, but this is a different season, 1982. But Twins rookie Gary Gady hit 2 home runs in the inaugural game. So good job, Gary, really christening that new stadium, but they did ultimately end up losing in front of the biggest crowd ever at home. And then finally, we go move to some sad news. We lost Al Kaline on this date in 2020. Kaline played 22 seasons in the MLB, all for the Detroit Tigers between 1953 and 1974. He was selected to 18 All-Star games and won 10 Gold Glove Awards. He won the 1968 World Series with Detroit against the Cardinals, where he hit .379 with an OPS over 1 and 8 RBIs through 7 games. Kaline also won the Roberto Clemente Award for the player who exemplifies baseball, sportsmanship, and community, as well as performance on the field. He's part of the 3,000 Hit Club and was a first ballot Hall of Famer in 1980. He later became a color commentator for the Tigers before moving to the Tigers front office until his death. So, rest in peace, Hall of Famer Al Kaline. So ending on a sad note, I know, but that was the first show. Thank you guys for joining. This is going to go up on Tunnel Vision Sports website. Probably some clips on YouTube. It's also going to go on Spotify and I think Apple Music. So make sure to listen wherever you are subscribed or on our website for free at tunnelvisionsports.com. Thank you guys and see you next week.